So let's just talk about some different statistical models now related to determining cost behavior. So the three we're going to talk about today are scatter diagrams, high-low method, and regression. And so why might we use this? And so I want us to consider coming in. Not a lot of times I'll be talking about starting your own business because I think it's the easiest to conceptualize. But in reality, most of you are going to go work for big corporations or big companies, or companies at least that have already been established or started. Maybe they might be a startup that's been around for 3 or 4 years. And so we have a challenge with these companies, right? Where there's already been costs associated, and there probably wasn't accountants or finance people tracking those costs. And so we really won't be able to understand. We'll just have some data, right? We might get a QuickBooks dump of data, or we might get just an Excel sheet or a Google sheet of just a bunch of data that says, like, here's all the money we spent over the last 5 years. And then we'd have to decide, well, we might not know. We didn't make these relationships with vendors. We might not have any clue how these cost behaviors map out. And so it'll be really hard for us to do a break-even analysis or business plan at this point unless we are able to determine the behavior of these costs. And so we'll have to use some of these tools once the data is already there. And so this is after the fact, some statistical tools we can use to monitor data behavior. And so most of you will be using these kind of tools in work if you go to work for a startup or some kind of company, because most of the time startups aren't started by accountants. They're started by entrepreneurs who aren't really worried about the finance side as much. But I promise you, knowing this, if you do start your own business or you help a startup, it's going to be a lot more valuable to them. So what we'll do is we can kind of do scatter diagrams as one method, where we go in and we'll just drop all of the costs like by invoice and see, like, based on our volume, where are how are our costs by volume, and where are we seeing it? So we see, like, we'll look and say, okay, when we produce 10,000, or right here, we produce 20,000, and this is in March, we produced 20,000 units, it was about $15,000. When we produce 30,000 units in the month, maybe this is each data point's a month, right? And 30,000 units we produced, it cost us $25,000. At 50,000 units, it cost us $20,000, and so on and so forth, or closer to 30,000. We go and see, okay, based on every single month of data we have, what was our total costs for the business? And then we'll back into it. We'll be able to know the slope, and then algebraically we'll be able to go in and determine so we know our total cost, and we'll know our slope based off of the average cost behavior, the line of the cost behavior, and then we'll be able to back into our total fixed costs, what we're expecting our fixed costs to be. One of many methods we can use to determine the cost behavior to start a business plan or do a break-even analysis. High-low method, similar, it's just another way to use algebra in order to determine, after we have the data, to determine our fixed costs and variable costs. And again, it's an estimate. But here we have our total costs. We'll take the highs of the total costs, the highest month, and then the lowest month. And then, we can use total costs, or a good example is using 2 levels of volume. So we can use the highest levels of volume and the lowest levels of volume, and then compute their total fixed costs. And so the idea here is when our highest level of volume, 67,500 here, it costs us $31,000, right? And our lowest level of volume was 17,500 units here, which costs us $18,500. And so we take the difference, that's all we're doing here, saying 50,000 units, 31,000 minus 18,500 at $12,500. And then we just, this is our way to determine our slope. So our 31,000 minus the 18,500 equals this 12,500 divided by the 50,000 equals our 25 cents per unit, our 25 cents per unit. So now that we know that this is our slope, right, 25x, then we just have to determine what our fixed costs are. And then we can just plug it back into the equation. So the 25 cents, you do it for either one. 25 cents times the 67,500 is equal to our 31,000. then we determine that 16,875. That's what the 25 cents times the 67,500 is. And then that means our total fixed cost is 14,125. You plug this back into either equation and you'll get the same. So again, basic algebra in order to determine what our estimated fixed costs and variable costs are. This is called the high-low method. Very similar to what the scatter diagram is doing. This is just plotting a line. So you could plot the line, or what I'd say is more normal is to do the high-low method, or even now that we have the software, Excel can just do a regression analysis. This is a good like back of the envelope calculation. If you just want to do something really quick and don't have the software available, you can determine, okay, this is kind of our average cost and our fixed costs for this company. And then we have our regression analysis. And so regression analysis is, I'm not going to cover the details of it here. You should cover it in your statistics course. But the idea is that you are determining something called the line of best fit. And I have other statistic videos that you can watch on the channel related to regression analysis. But the idea is you have something called an R2 and your R, and it determines your correlation or your line of best fit. And what it does is it looks at all of the points here. It look at everything and tell you how related the costs are to the units produced, and then determine this kind of line and the statistical likelihood that the cost match the months, so that your relationship is actually statistically significant. And so just know that the regression model is used to determine total fixed costs and variable costs. And it's going to give you your most accurate information because it'll actually tell you if they are related statistically. And if they aren't, then you can go and change it up. Maybe months isn't correct. Maybe your output isn't correct. Maybe it's the number of clients you serve, and you can change up your modeling. But for this course, all I expect you to be tested on is the high-low method and maybe interpreting scatter diagrams, but really going to be testing more on the high-low method and just the concepts of variable cost behavior. And so don't worry too much about regression. Just know it exists and that you're going to have to learn it in your advanced cost classes and statistics courses. So comparing, using regression, we get a higher fixed cost and a lower variable cost. So the regression is going to be a little more accurate, but then for the business, is it that much more accurate? We're not looking at a huge percentage change. So it depends on, if we're working with a smaller business, maybe it really doesn't matter to do this regression analysis. The high-low method might give us a good estimate, but as the businesses get bigger and more complex, it makes more sense to use the regression analysis.